Hello, this is Raziel Cohen with ndftraining.com, and today we're looking at the Modlite pistol-mounted weapon light. Modlite is another one of those companies that probably doesn't need that big of an introduction. They're still relatively new in comparison to other brands that are on the market, but again, they're bringing something that's unique to the market that other people weren't able to do. To my understanding, Modlite means it's kind of a modular light. They're able to choose a lot of different light heads and bodies and styles that you could choose from to be able to kind of get the perfect light for you. This was sent to me by HCM Holsters to be able to check out along with their holster video that you probably have already seen, and it's a very, very interesting weapon light. There's definitely going to be pros and cons and things to take into consideration to figure out if this is the right light for you. But on the surface, the features and the kind of lumens and light output that it's being able to put out is very impressive. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go kind of through a basic rundown of this specific light and then also compare it to a very popular light, which is the Streamlight flashlights, to kind of give you an idea of what's been going through in technology. So let's go through some of the specs that come with this specific light head. This light head has a 1350 lumen output with a 54,000 lumen Candella. Based on what they're saying on their website, if you have to choose between any of the weapon lights, this is the one they recommend for the pistol. Now, those numbers are very impressive. And the question is, who would this be kind of good and used for? The first thing that comes to mind is law enforcement. If you're a person who's dealing with traffic stops and you ended up getting into a situation where you already had to pull out your gun, one thing I was very curious to try out is its effectiveness of going through windows. I made a video recently, just very recently, on rifle lights and their effectiveness of going through windows as well as through fog. That was a very cool video. But this is also something for law enforcement, is that if you're going to be approaching a car, you really want as much punch going through that window so you could be able to see through maybe a tinted window or just windows in at night, or if you're during the bright day, being able to see through those windows and still see it effectively. So I set up a very basic test, and what you're probably watching right now is the footage of me going from outside a vehicle into a vehicle and trying to see how much you're able to see with that kind of very strong hotspot. And then I'm going to compare that with the Streamlight. Now, the Streamlight's specifications are obviously going to be a little bit different. The Streamlight is, this specific one that I'm having is using the 800 lumen model, and it has around 15,000 Candela. So there's a very big difference in regards to that center hotspot, and you could usually very quickly tell the difference of the lights kind of bouncing back at you when you're looking at a window versus when you have a very hot, very strong hotspot, that push being able to go through the window. Now, I'm not sure what it is, but for me personally, when I was using these lights side by side, I felt that the light of the Streamlight had a kind of a more uniform and a little bit of a wider hotspot than the Modlite. I don't know if that's just maybe my eyes or maybe that's some form of bias. However, when I was doing it side by side, it seemed like the Streamlight has a little bit more of a flow. But one thing for sure, on the pistol light, you're really able to see that punch down the center, and it's definitely in no comparison to each other. Now, something that's, I think, kind of important to be able to mention, some people might look at it as having that very strong hotspot is specifically meant for long range shooting or more distance shooting than you averagely would with a pistol. But that's not really necessarily the case, although obviously that is something you're able to do. The main thing I take out of having that hotspot, specifically on a pistol, is for that punch, meaning going through a window, going from a well-lit area to a dark-lit area. Those are very important details to be able to take into account, because especially right now, which is unfortunate, dealing with active shootings and other trends along those styles, if you're going to be responding to a call, if you're an officer responding to a call, you really want to make sure that you have a good and efficient amount of light going into that building as possible, so you can be able to see and identify things that might be important to be able to see. Now, this is something that's common that I tell people often, is that just because you have a firearm and you carry it during the day does not mean you're not going to get into those situations where you might need that extra punch. So it's very much something that's important to take care of. In fact, it's more important to have a light with a very strong hotspot during the day than it would be at night, because at night even lower output lights could do pretty well because there's not enough ambient light to kind of get into the way of that. So that might be something that it should be worth taking into account. One of the cons that I'll say about this light in particular is that it is very, very big. It's a huge light. So this is not something I would personally conceal carry. I'm sure there are guys out there who say it's fine and that they do it on a day-to-day basis. I don't feel like it's a good option, especially for long term, because you have a lot of extra packing that's going to be going on, which is not comfortable. It's really not comfortable. Already, if you're carrying a Glock 17, which is a bigger gun to be able to conceal carry, especially appendix, that's already a big gun, and this light is still going to be pushing past that in size. It's a big light. So to my understanding, this is still bigger than maybe the Surefire lights, which is also a pretty big light in comparison to the Streamlight. So that might be something to take into account. For me, this would be good as a duty light, something that you're going to have outside the waistband in a duty style holster, in which case that size doesn't really matter because it's going to be outside your pants anyway, and it's just still going to be able to be comfortable in its own setting. I made a video again that you probably already saw with the holster compatibility with this and the HCM holsters, and it fit very, very nicely, and I thought it was a very good match for each other. So that might be a good holster option to be able to take into account, mainly because to my understanding as of now, Safariland does not make a lot of those other options when it comes to other light compatibility. So having a duty holster such as the HCM would probably work very well together, and that might be something you want to look into. So that's really the only con for me. Now, something I'd probably have to do a lot more training on. It's not really a con, more of like a training scar that I have to probably get over, is I'm used to the Streamlight paddles where when you tap it, it's kind of just a momentary, and when you let go, it pops off. What this is when you tap it, it goes on and stays on until you manually remove it. So for me, I'm still more comfortable with having the momentary, although a lot of times once you turn on the light, you might be keeping that light on. The Streamlight has the option where you toggle it the other direction and it stays on as well. So I feel like I would personally prefer to have those momentary options as opposed to kind of sticking between flopping back and forth and kind of accidentally leaving it on constant on. So that might be something else you might want to look into or just practice a lot more of when you get this light. Something else that's worth noting in regards to this light is that it's using 18350 battery, which is a very great battery, and it also feeds from the front. So instead of like the Streamlight option where you'd have to remove the light from the actual gun and change it from the back, if for whatever reason, again, this is I think very valuable for people in law enforcement where you want to be able to switch batteries and not need to kind of hassle with that. Being able to remove the battery from the front and be able to put a new battery in, I think is a very valuable option. And with this option, it has around the 30 to 40 minute runtime for that light. Being that it has that kind of battery, it does make the light bigger, and also with the options that they're having available, having that big like bezel is able to give it different lumens and Candella output. So that might be something also be able to look at with regards to long-term use, and as well as also being able to have that kind of output for this kind of battery. So the Streamlights use a CR123. On most of my lights right now, I'm running a CR123, except one of the newer ones that I got with the Malkoff head that uses the 18650, but that's more on a rifle light. So this is really something that I feel like, again, for duty use, it's not going to be that big of a deal because since it's going to be outside the waistband anyway, and being able to be very much out of the way, it's not like a concealed carry option where you're constantly worried about something digging into you. Again, just to clarify, whether this is going to be appendix, the 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock positions, those are all going to be positions that this will still protrude a lot of, even if it's going to be inside the waistband, because it's just very, very large. So you're really adding almost 2 inches of extra space when it comes to the size of the gun, just because of that light. So at this point, it might be even worth being able to carry a Glock 34. Obviously, the grip is going to be a different characteristic as well, but it's definitely very big. So this is not something, in my opinion, I'd recommend using for concealed carry. It's much more something I would recommend for duty use as an option. I'm still much more comfortable with the Streamlight TLR1 HL with the 1000 lumen option, which I think is great and very usable for what it needs to be. For duty use, and it's something that you really are more concerned of having that punch and having that battery life and having that battery style and capability of front loading, I think is very valuable. And that might be something to take into account as well. If you have any additional questions, if you want to see any additional testing on this platform, please feel free to let me know in the comments below, and I'll see if I can make a video on that for you. This is Raziel Cohen with ndftraining.com. Thank you for watching.